What's up, sentimentally speaking viewers? Thank you and welcome to another segment on my show where today I am going to delve into the mind of an extraordinary artist and entrepreneur. I'm your host, Lady L to the IPS. Yes, your favorite queen of hearts. And as you can see, I am joined by a true creative force. I want y'all to meet Nerd the Poet. He's a young Black entrepreneur and a spoken word artist with a story as diverse as the cities he's called home. From the inner city to college experiences, Nerd has captured it all on paper, from screenplays to magazine articles. In 2002, he founded Nerd the Poet Productions, which is a poetic event and consulting company that is really dedicated to what we would say curating art share opportunities and recreational entertainment through spoken word. But as you're going to find out, his passions go well beyond the pages. He truly is a what we would like to call a community servant at heart. He uses his art and his voice, which neither go unheard. He's a winner of the 2022 DC Poet Project. He's what we will call a change agent, and he's basically seeking to spread his creativity and mentor others on the same path. So, welcome, and I hope you can share in this journey as we really explore Nerd's impact that he's making on the world right here on Sentimentally Speaking. So, Nerd, Jane, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you. That sounds like a real amazing person. I can't wait to meet him.
Well, if you're as lucky as we are, you'll be meeting him real soon. Oh, people probably are like, she don't live in DC. How she know Nerd? So I would like to tell y'all that I met Nerd through the fabulous Tyrell, who is the CEO and podcast host of the Back Community. He's also an author of Just a Kid from Arbor Hill. So when y'all get a chance, check him out. I think he attended a author's night or something
yes,
put
yes, an
together.
evening with authors.
Evening with Author, and you were the host. And I remember getting a follow request on Instagram, and I was like, "Oh, who's this?" Checked you out, and I was like, "Oh, poetry, click, let's approve." And that's how we connected. I don't know if you remember, but I like to give my audience that opportunity. So before I get started and running my mouth about my questions, is there anything you want to say about my introduction, about yourself, that you want the people to know?
Yes, what I didn't get a chance to put in the bio is that I was also awarded the DMV Renaissance Best Male Poet of 2023.
Congratulations! What does a award like that um look at for an artist?
So the DMV Renaissance Awards is a collective of two individuals who are kind of like poets themselves, but poet appreciators, and they created an award ceremony to celebrate community artists and people who have impacted art share in the DMV area. So it started out in the pandemic. This is the third year that they've had it, and it's basically the people nominate, the people vote, and there's an award ceremony at Creative Suitland in Suitland, Maryland, and it's just a night of us celebrating each other. So, you know, winning Best Male Poet, I mean, I guess people feel like I had an impact in the DMV poetry community um, for the work that I've been doing since I've gotten out here. So,
You most certainly have had an impact. So you're not from DC. You're
no,
from the West Coast.
yeah, from Los Angeles, California.
Okay. West Side. Shout out to y'all. So what brought you to DC and how was it that you were able to have such a major impact in the world of poetry on this side of this country so
You know,
quickly?
yeah, it's so interesting, and it's really just a testimony to when you're obedient to God's purpose that He has in your life, you know, doors open for you. You know what I'm saying? Opportunities happen. And it was all just a vision. I knew that I wanted to get out of LA. I had boots on the ground since 2016 when I did my first book tour, and we're just looking for a change of pace. But I want to be around culture. I want to be around my people. I think what really sold me on it too, now that I think about it, I went to my first HBCU homecoming as a part of a traveling poetry show produced by Tough Crowd out of South Central LA. And I was just like, yo, the culture is so rich here and vibrant. Like this is what I've been missing. Like it awoke in a new side and just a new vision for me, you know. So I started researching immediately on areas that um, had a lot of Black professionals, and Prince George's County, Maryland was one of them. So I just started applying to jobs, and I ended up getting a job out here because I was gonna have a job first before I moved.
Mhm.
And yeah, the rest is history since then.
Okay. And you made a splash in the poetry world. Like, I'm so impressed with the events you host and the connections you make and the productions you put on. Like, I want to be like him when I grow up in my poetry world. I'm not even lying because I've loved poetry since Maya Angelou. Like, they tried to
Mm,
get us to read Edgar Allan Poe. Okay, cool. He didn't really, but Maya was like, I want to be like her. And that's when I really began to realize that I could take words and
yeah.
make them into a story and something beautiful and something graceful. And before we get into how you really were able to get your poetic footing on the ground in DC and make a name for yourself so you are getting recognized for words, people probably like, why is she calling him Nerd the Poet? Does he have a name? So, yes, he does have a name. Nerd, tell the people what your biological name is.
My government name is Dominic McDonald. But if you look up Dominic Nerd McDonald on Google, you will see um, my books, articles, interviews, all the things.
And what the people may not know is that you didn't coin this, you've adopted the term, but you didn't coin this name yourself. I watched a podcast you did with another young lady, and it was first something. Pardon me for not realizing, remember her name. What is it? Help me out. She
Um,
had fur in her name. She wore like
oh, Z
furry
with the fur. Yeah,
see with the fur. And you were telling her on there that you got the name in high school. Some
yeah,
kids called you, one guy called you a nerd, and I think he meant it affectionately though.
yeah.
But as we all know, nerd could be an insult, it could be a diss. People or it could be feel slighted by it. But you actually took the term and you adopted it. Why?
You know, I, and this goes into my book, which is called "I'd Rather Be Called a Nerd," because if I was gonna be if I was going to take a term and use it as a term of endearment that was supposed to be negative, I'd rather use that N word than the other N word that we call ourselves, right? So I figured, you know, I'm going to be called a nerd regardless. I might as well use that same concept and take it as a term of endearment and make it look my way, like how I look, right? And
Mm,
I kind of just took that and ran with it.
love it. So can you share with me, with us, um, basically, what was that pivotal moment in your life, nerd, that truly inspired you to become a spoken word artist, and eventually an entrepreneur? Like, at what point did you realize I have something here and I want to share it with the world? Like, how did you say I'm a professional poet and I'm coming out to the world? At what point did you discover that?
That's a very good question. I think it was when I did a poem that I won a scholarship pageant with at um I forgot the conference, but I think it was through this program called Upward Bound, and they wanted some entertainment there. And you know, I did my piece, and it was interesting because like for me, I just wanted to kill the piece, you know what I'm saying? But I had two of my big brothers there, poetry mentors, philosophy, and Dragonfly John out of Long Beach, and they were just like, "Yo, like people was really." like feeling that. And I was shy at the time. I was like, I could probably did all right. You know what I'm saying? And it was so good that like the professionals there like wanted to get more insight and have conversations with me afterwards. So I was like, okay, maybe there is something to this thing. And before that, I've never performed at a conference before. I've done like open mics at the school, and I haven't done anything out. At the time I hadn't done anything outside of school, so they kind of took me along as their little bro and started navigating me to the same places that they were at. And I think that was back in 2011. It's back in 2011.
So what were you in your 20s, 30s?
I was in my 20s. I think I was
Okay.
yeah, I think I was like 23, 24. And then I actually had stopped and slowed down in doing poetry because I wanted to finish school. And it had been like this 2 year gap. And they saw me again at 7-Eleven when I was getting like I was just getting like some water or something coming out of this party. And it was like, yo, when's your next show? And I was like, next show? I don't really don't do that anymore. And one was like, you should reconsider that decision. And um, that's when my poetry career started in 2013 as like a professional poet. So it's actually been 10 years since that time.
Okay. Do you remember what that poem was?
That poem was I'd rather be called a nerd.
Okay, so that's your self-entitled book.
Yeah.
And what came first, the book idea or the poem?
The poem came first.
Okay, and then you expanded it and wrote a book.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that a lot. Super dope. I'm gonna have to check both of them out. So nerd, let's see. You went from the West Coast to the East Coast, from Los Angeles to DC. How would you say these different environments influence your creative process and or your life experiences? Did you find that you were in one space while you were over on the West Side, and then when you came to the East Side, maybe and discovered this big cultural environment? Did that have an impact on your writing, or would you say you've stayed consistent across the board?
So I was just telling someone this yesterday at a networking mixer. LA is how you look. DC is what you do, right? So when I came out here, I had to look, persona, so on and so forth. But people like this is the first time people have like actually sat me down and like, but who is Dominic? And I was like, Dominic, like nobody cares about him. And that kind of challenged me to really get into, who am I as a person? What's my character like? Because it wasn't. I guess I want to say that people wanted more, and at first I thought it was really just kind of them being like nosy and invasive, but then I was like, well, no, these people actually have connections and are excited about different things. Like I used to lie to people and tell them that I was a traveling magician, and they would be like, "Oh my god, I love magic. We went to a magic show recently." And I was like, "Wow, y'all are really just gullible."
Horrible.
um. So yeah, and then it really got me into like the business side, like uh, protecting your intellectual property, getting into trademarking and getting sponsorships, doing things at like embassies and other professional networking events and stuff like that. So it enhanced the professional side, whereas LA, like everything is just about the facade of things, which was actually what drove me out of LA because I'm like, there's no substance here. Like, where's
Mm.
the where's the transformation? Where's the wealth? Where's the actual building? And I think I got that out here being in the DC area. The weather was a little shock, and the insects too. I don't know.
Yo.
I feel like every type of bug is out here, but
Oh my
um,
gosh.
yeah, no, I think it just, like I said, gave me that other side that I was looking forward to, make me, the holistic entrepreneurial artist that I am.
Mhm. Okay, I think that's super dope. So you came over here and got culture. You enhanced your creativity. You created a business. It sounds like the switch, the relocation was a positive thing for you. That's super dope. Congrats on all that.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about Nerd to Poet Productions and what inspired you to create this platform? What's your vision for its impact on the artistic community?
Right, right. So originally, I wanted to start a record label because I started getting into writing, through hip hop, right? And the business model I got was, I believe it was from, Lupe Fiasco, and he started, uh, F&F Productions, and I think I saw or, heard in an interview that he signed himself as his first artist, right? So, I think about longevity in the poetry world because I've seen so many great poets, be like slam champions and, have a book or so. But after about a good maybe 3 to 5 years, they start growing up, get responsibilities, and then that, pizzazz is gone and like the voice is gone too because they're speaking to the generation that grew up with them as an artist, right? And it's like it's only so much that you can say with being outside of the newer, younger generation, right?
Mm,
So I had to think about, what is going to keep the longevity when it comes to who I am as an artist. And it was building a brand and a platform. Thus, Nerd Deploy Productions was born because I was producing these shows, by myself. So I figured I might as well make a business out of it and have my own events be my signature events. And if someone else wants to do it, I can, train them or franchise it or host or what have you. But it just gave me more options for longevity. I think I made that decision in, 2021 during the pandemic.
I am I am so smitten. Like I I'm just really I don't even know if impressed is the right word, but you've definitely inspired me. I told Tyrell one time I wasn't really around people who inspired me to want to do more and be better because we just our environment sometimes just is a complacent
Mhm.
environment. And I just love hearing people who are, pulling ideas from their mind and taking what they're passionate about and what they're really good out at and maximizing it to the point where they can, profitize it. And I just
Right.
I love that. I love that. And it's a way for you to be you while also monetizing something that you're interested in, you're passionate about, and you're really good at.
Definitely. Definitely.
Super dope. Poetry, right? When people think of poetry, they just think of rhyming lines. Like,
Right.
Dr. Seuss poetry, red is for roses,
Hmm.
but some may not realize that there's so many different types of poetry that exist.
Right.
There's sonnet, 14-line poems. It's usually written in a uh what I don't know how you pronounce it, iambic
Iambic
way where it's
pentameter.
very yes, rhythmic and
Mhm.
schemy. And then I noticed that you post haiku. And for
Yeah.
those who don't know what haiku is, it's like a traditional Japanese poetry, which consists of like 3 lines with 5 7 syllable structures. And it
Yes.
usually focus on, some type of nature change in season. But when you do haiku, it's usually a gem style of poetry. And I only discovered this, in preparation for our interview because I'm like,
Okay.
he's a poet. Let's talk about the different kind of poetries. I tend to only gravitate towards one type of poetry. And I discovered haiku and I had to look it up. And I'm counting like, oh, he really is doing haiku. And it
Hmm.
was amazing to me. But in addition to that, you got your free. verse poetry where it doesn't really
Mm.
follow a specific rhyme or
Right.
a meter scheme. It's just, allows you flexibility in terms of your own structure and style. And then I think in researching it, I might be more of I think I'm not really freestyle because I really think about it, but maybe a ode or a ballad type. I don't know. I'll have
Okay.
to recite you one of my poems and you could be like, you know what? This is what you are. This is the type of poetry you do. But do you have a favorite type of poetry that you like to recite?
I like to do I like prose. Um,
Hmm. Can you explain
and
what prose is and why you like it?
so prose poetry is like not rhyming poetry, but it's not free form because um there is some type of like sentence structure and enjambments in there. But a combination, if you look at my earlier work in my first book, The Love Song of Dean McDonald, that is written in a lot of rhythmical prose. And the newer one, I'd rather be called a nerd, has a little more free writes because it kind of makes the poem on the page like in a form of art. Like
Mm,
there's a poem that I have shaped in the shape of a D, which is the first letter of my name. You know,
mm,
so um, yeah, I really don't say I have a favorite because
okay.
I'm more so like getting the piece out, and I have different pieces for different audiences, right? So if it's
Hmm.
like you know a very attentive audience, which is what you will find in palm colored places, then I'll do something that's a little has more imagery, something to where like it's not very wordy or lyrical, but if it's in a place where it's like um, typical like poetry slam, I'll do slam poetry.
Mm,
So it really varies, and I enjoy the experience of each one that I decide to select.
okay. Um, so when you're performing, and do you perform based on do you pick your genre and your types of poetry, or do you compose them based on your audience for that night? Like if you're going to more of a finger snapping, just spoken word type of thing, or if you're doing a slam poetry, or if you're doing open mic night for like a college or something like that, are
Mhm.
you basically customizing your poem around your audience? Or do you just like whatever I'm feeling, this is what I'm performing?
Yeah, I did when I first started, it was, whatever I was feeling.
Mm,
But as I grew, it really became about what can the audience take away. And I feel like you can only do that by doing something that's impactful in the moment, which will be like what shift happens, right? So if the last 3 or 4 people was doing love poems, well, I'm going to do something about, life. Or if everybody was doing things that are political, I'm going to do something that's kind of witty. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, yeah. So people won't be able to say, oh, I went to a poetry night and it was all this or it was all that.
mm.
You know what I'm saying? Because now you can't differentiate what artist was doing what. It was just like, this is what I was hearing
Okay.
all night.
I think that's fair. I don't think I've ever thought about it in that sense. I think as a person who I've attended poetry nights, I performed at them. I think I just appreciated the creativity. So if
Mhm.
people were just talking about life and, breakups or, growing up, however, or, funny, I just always liked the wordplay and the creativity that they exuded while being on stage. So do you have more than one poem ready to perform at any given time?
Yes.
Wait, you said yes?
Yes, I do. I
How
have a
long does it take you to memorize your poetry?
it's just like how your parents said you can memorize your songs better than homework. that's
Okay.
yeah, that's what it is for me. And it's like muscle memory, and
Mm,
I try to do poems that aren't as challenging um word wise, as far as uh the flow of them, right? Because when I first started writing, I used to like do poetry like fast, you know what I'm saying? Like rapid fire poetry. But now I was like, well, okay, people want to get into the emotion, and maybe I said something that they might have missed. So, I want to be able to have the poem be impactful in that moment. So,
mhm.
yeah, at any given time, I have about a good seven poems that I can recite.
Wow. Do you ever repeat poems?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I repeat poems. I have poems that are from different projects as well. So if I am, trying to sell product, I will do the signature poems of that book, and then sometimes I'll debut something new. But I usually save my newer stuff for what we like to call the gym, which is like your typical open mic, where it's not like you go in there and you trying to wow everybody and make sales and get Instagram followers and stuff like that. It's like you got this piece in your heart, you want to share it. Like the original reason why we started doing poetry, but you know,
Mm,
the enterprising and brand building is good too.
okay. So for somebody who writes poetry, it just sits on the pages of their notebook, sits in their notepad on their phone, sits in a Word document on their laptop or computer, and they have this burning desire to just go and perform their piece because they think it's super dope, super liberating. They think others might find it interesting. But they're nervous, they're
Mhm.
scared, they're worried about being judged, they're worried about people not liking it. How can you encourage them to get over that fear? And what are some tips you can give them to prepare for the moment should they choose to pursue it?
Well, one I would say reciting the poem is about you, right? So if it's something that you want to get out, that is your spirit and your conscience saying it's something that you gotta release, right? And at least one or two people is gonna connect with it. I don't care, how many people is in the room, who is in the room, someone is going to connect to your piece. And so we can't overthink it, right? I would say that's the first thing. Don't overthink it, and don't negative self-talk about doing the piece. Now, it is helpful if you've been in the room before, and is it mature, is it rowdy, so on and so forth, because you are going to want to go into rooms where the audience is attentive, especially if you're doing new stuff. That way you don't have to worry about, commanding the stage and stuff like that. And you can do that too, but that comes with time. And, you know, breathe, uh, go over the piece a few times before you share it. If don't worry about memorizing it if you don't want to memorize it.
Mhm.
I found it that people will be attentive to a piece as long as it flows. Right. So even if
Mm,
you're reading it or reciting it, as long as you can flow through it, get it out, then it'll be impactful. So
mm. And I noticed that people want you to do well. People genuinely want to see you up there doing well. If you're not nervous and you exude that nervousness, your audience is going to be very uncomfortable for you.
yeah,
They could feel that. So it's almost like go up there with an air of confidence.
yeah,
And like you said, even if you don't memorize it, be familiar with it so that even if you slip up or flub, you can jump right back into the flow and maybe ad lib for a word or two, you know, and get you right back on track. Have you
yeah.
ever experienced anybody getting booed or people being disrespectful or, talking during a performance?
Yeah, like some of the larger crowds that I've gone to. You may get some rowdiness there, um, and that's just the nature of the environment. I haven't seen anyone. I haven't seen anyone get booed unless they're like being super polarizing, super abrasive,
Mm,
and confrontational. Now, I will tell this short story. There was the first time that I've ever seen a fight happen because of but it was more so like an argument. And
mm-hmm,
this was in Baltimore, and I don't know who's gonna see this. So I'm not gonna say the person's name, but they got
mm-hmm.
on stage, they started performing, they got off stage, and I guess a lady there was drunk or something like that. And I don't know if she knew that particular artist or not, but she was doing a poem while he was doing a poem, and they were like going at it against each other. And then someone had to drag her out.
She
That
just
was in
stood up and started
Baltimore.
reciting a poem during his time.
Yeah.
It was the
And she,
alcohol, probably.
and she had to be escorted out by security. That was the first time. That was the first time I came out to Baltimore, and I was like, "Wow, I've never seen an argument happen at a poetry open mic. This is interesting."
Do they argue poetically? Like, this is fucked up that you would even.
It was something like that. I was just, look, I've never seen it since then, but that was definitely an experience for the books.
I'm thinking back on the movie where the two guys were arguing, but it wasn't really an argument. It was like, well, you know what? You have a good day too, brother. No, you
Oh,
have a better day. But I don't know what movie that, but that always
that was
cracks me up.
sorry to
Like,
bother you. Yeah,
what is it?
it's called Sorry to Bother You.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is. I watched it on Netflix, and I was like, if only we could have debates like that, the world would be a better place. So, nerd, I got, probably time for one or two more questions because I don't want to hold you. I appreciate you donating your time to Sentimentally Speaking.
Okay.
But I want to talk a little bit about Nerd the Poet Productions because, like I said, I think that's super dope that you came up um with this. And essentially, as someone who values community service, and who values the beauty and creative poetry. Looking towards your future, what would you say are some of the goals and aspirations as for you as an artist and as an entrepreneur? And how do you envision um, Nerd the Poet Productions? Going where do you see it going in the future? And what are your highest goals for your company?
Okay, yeah. So the highest goals that I have is to become an enterprise, right? Eventually, Nerd Report Productions will become a part of a larger conglomerate of things that deal with art share and community. But as it is right now, it's structured into about five signature events. One I'm keeping to myself because it hasn't been produced yet, and I have to protect my IP. But there's Refresh Open Mic, which is my signature open mic that I started with. Then there is Refresh Comedy Night, which allows me to flex in my comedy host bag a little bit. And there's an evening with authors, which is the event that connected both of us together.
Mhm.
And refresh press play, which is a music specific open mic because I love my rappers and songwriters and songstresses, but if an open mic that focuses on poetry with like 10 rappers, like it's not gonna it's not marketable. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I wanted to have a space for them, and then I
So,
also have an event that will bring poetry with an activity to make a date night.
a what? Can
A
we
date night.
collaborate? Because I am the queen of hearts, okay? Maybe I'm sure there's something I can do.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would
I
love to
am a
come out to
self-proclaimed
North Carolina,
matchmaker.
and I would love to come out to North Carolina and do an event with you.
What if I come to DC and do an event with you?
Oh, that's That's even better.
I don't get to hang in DC. And I was gonna make a promise that I'm coming to one of your shows. I'm
Okay.
driving. You 5 hours from New York, you 5 hours from North Carolina. I got like dual residency.
Okay.
So I'm coming through. So that's my promise to you because I appreciate you coming on my show. Thank you for joining me today. And to my audience, as always, thank y'all for being here with us because y'all could be anywhere in the world, but y'all chose to be here with me and Nerd. And we greatly appreciate y'all. Where can the folks find you in your book, Nerd?
You can find me on Instagram at Nerd the Poet. I'm trying to get my followers up to 10K so I can be monetized on Instagram. So, you know, we're almost there. You can also find me on Gig Salad if you want to book me, Nerd the Poet, and on LinkedIn and Facebook at Dominic Nerd McDonald.
Awesome. Y'all heard it here. Thank y'all. We really appreciate y'all.